myself, Luke, and Race. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday evening. Lots of news to get through, lots of updates with regards to Hugo Ekitike, Alexander Isak, Malik Fofana. We then also have updates with Marc Guehi and Luis Diaz, and more stuff is coming through from the likes of Ben Jacobs and others, just as we were about to go live as well. So we'll touch on all of that. Before we do, though, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We very much appreciate it. Make sure if you haven't done so already that you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos on our YouTube page. We will put a link below in the tweet that has just gone out in relation to this. If you're watching or listening on your favorite podcast provider, be that Spotify or Apple Music, make sure to follow anything Liverpool and make sure to jump over to our YouTube page as well and subscribe. But I'll introduce the two guys that I have with me at the moment for today. Maybe we get some more in the meantime. But Race, been a long time since me and you have been on a stream together and talked. How are you doing and how are you feeling about our summer business so far? We've not really had a chance to talk on stream in a while.
Man, it's been so long since I've been here. But yeah, I mean, it's been a busy summer, and all of the incoming moves that we've had. I mean, it's been so refreshing and to see us like on this side of it for once. I mean, we're finally spending the money. We're finally, in the news, every other week pretty much with a new player and this Ekitike stuff. I mean, it's kind of it's happened very quickly. Of course, it's been fun to follow, the Newcastle interest, and then us basically saying, oh no, we're taking him. He's our player. So run along, go do what you want. So we're taking him. And it's really exciting because it's obviously a big need for us, getting this striker position down. But it's been such a busy summer and in terms of the transfer fund, it's been an exciting window for us.
Yeah, I've been loving it myself, especially with who we're linked to. It's absolutely brilliant who we've been linked to, and I can't wait to see more of it. Luke, been a while since we've been on stream. We were together last week. How are you doing and how are you feeling about the more recent news of Hugo Ekitike, and obviously with a couple of the preseason games as well under the belt with the behind closed doors with Stoke? Obviously, Rio Ngamoa was very impressive in both games. I know you made a video on your TikTok about him. How are you feeling about our business so far, and are you happy with Ekitike? Do you still think we go for Isak? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's all a bit up in the air, isn't it? That's the only way to put it, really, isn't it? It's pie in the sky stuff with Isak at the moment. I think, for those who don't know, for those who do need the news, Eddie Howe has essentially sent Isak home, hasn't he, from one of their pre-season games. I think the word he said was clear as head. I'm not quite sure what it was. It basically just said it's not fair on him being there with all the speculation. So I think he's trying to diffuse the situation that way. But in reality, that's going to make the situation 5 times worse, isn't it? So it's all sort of come at the wrong time, hasn't it? Because it's sort of come after we agreed a deal for Ekitike, which is looking like it's going to go through, as we'll get on to talk about shortly. So, yeah, it's a bit of a weird scenario to be in today. It's sort of like there's probably not a world where we can get both of them, although you'd love it, but it appears Isak's somewhat unsettled. In terms of Liverpool, we've been boss, haven't we? We've been absolutely great in pre-season. Rio Ngamoa is some talent who could be getting some minutes, hopefully. I'm not sure what Arne Slot's plan for him is yet. I'm sure we'll share some opinions on it throughout. But yeah, sort of, I'd say positive in terms of how Liverpool are, but a bit sceptical in terms of Ekitike coming in and then the stuff going on with Isak. So yeah.
It's a good problem to have. Of we're going to get a really good up and coming young striker, and we may also be in the market for a current world class striker. It's a problem that we've never really had before, I guess. Race, some of the questions that are coming in here just regards this, like we really need a centre back, is one here that's come in from Saim, and then he also mentions about Lukeba from RB Leipzig or over Marc Guehi. What are your thoughts on that sort of comment? Like, should we target a more well-established in the market? Should we find somebody that's more established in the market, like a Lukeba or a Marc Guehi, or in the hopes that to cover off Konate possibly leaving, or should we be targeting young guys, maybe a Joe Gomez replacement for the next 12 months and a younger guy to develop through while essentially Kwanzaa's on a glorified loan for some reason?
Going after Guehi, I think that would be a really good, really smart move to make, because it's a position where, I mean, look at our center back room. We have, of course, Virgil there, but I mean, this Konate stuff, I mean, I don't know what the deal's going on with him, if the Madrid interest is there for next summer, if he's going to leave, I mean, that makes me nervous. And so we're really looking at, one reliable center back, moving forward if Konate indeed is gone, next summer. And Joe Gomez, is kind of up and down, and injuries have caught up to him. I think he's still a fine player and a worthy, player to keep around, but you certainly want someone more reliable. And so for me, Guehi, I mean, coming from, obviously established Premier League player, England international, he's still a good age, only 24, 25 years old. He's I think captain of Crystal Palace. I mean, I think it'd be such a great piece of business to do. I think it's your classic, player who spent his time and spent his, given as much as he could to Crystal Palace, but now he's looking to move on to, a bigger club with bigger ambitions. And again, he's number one in England. He's been starting for England and stuff, and he's the quality. He's maybe not, he's just. I think he'd be a really great player to bring in. Now that since we're linked with Guehi, I don't think there's any reason to look off from him. Unless some other target comes up for someone you like. But I think that would just be a really intelligent piece of business, and that's. We're talking about, going for Isak as well, possibly going for Isak too with Ekitike. I mean, I still think going after a center back would be, for me, more of a priority than, going after an Isak. Of course, if you can do both for some reason, I mean, that would be incredible. But I think, that is a move that has to be made, because you can't ignore, the limited depth that we have even right now, even with Van Dijk and Konate and Joe Gomez. I mean, we're kind of still looking for some more players on that back line. And so, for me, I just think ever since we've been linked with him, ever since that move kind of has been put out there, I haven't really moved off of him. I think that's still a move you have to revisit, as much as you can, and try to, bring him in. The fee won't be, I don't think it'd be anything too crazy. I mean, again, you have to pay the money to get a quality player in the transfer market. So I don't think it's anything outrageous or anything that's, it's certainly not the whatever crazy money that United spent for Harry Maguire. I mean, you were getting a better player than that, for less. So, I mean, so I think it'd be a really good piece of business, and that's kind of where my focus is at right now. I haven't really looked at any other options, but that's just kind of where I'm looking at.
Good. It's where I'm looking at as well. There's a lot of options out there, and we're kind of spoiled for choice to a degree, because while there's nobody that really stands out in the center back market, there are some really positive young options that are there at the moment. We've somebody, as we mentioned here, we've Marvel mentioned in here of Jarell Hatto. He's one major one that could be there. We also then have the likes of Giovanni Leone, the young 18-year-old that's in Parma at the moment, who's 6'5" at the age of 18, absolute physical monster. But Luke, with the centre back market in the way that it is, how do you see us proceeding? Obviously, we've basically said, Jarell Kwanzaa on what I would consider a glorified loan, sold him for 35 million worth of pure profit, which works out at nearly 150 million on the books, and have a buyback in the region of about 50 million, 60 million to get him back in 2 years. I think that's a glorified loan. It's to test the water to see if he can handle it in a Champions League environment. Thankfully, he wasn't playing the other day in that 5-0 thumping that they got. But how do you see us moving in the centre back market? Are we going to go with youthful and exuberance, shall we say, or are we going to move more towards the likes of a Marc Guehi, who's a captain in a Premier League club, who's opportunistic to a degree in how he only has a year left, and it's either Palace sell this summer or lose him for free in 12 months. How do you see us moving forward?
Yeah, I think I'm in the Marc Guehi camp. I think we do need someone a little bit more established at centre-back, and that's just because Konate's contract situation is a bit up in the air, isn't it? So if you can bring someone in who's ready to play at Premier League level and isn't going to need that nurturing per se, that would be much better for Liverpool, in my opinion. I understand sort of the other links and some of the suggestions in the chat of Jarell Hatto and Lukeba. I mean, I think they're both, Hatto and Lukeba are both really similar players. They're both quite versatile defenders. They can both play left back, right back, centre back. A lot of the time, Hatto's sort of left back, centre back, and Lukeba's either side of a back three, and he has played in a wing back role as well. We had to pay, I think his release clause, I did a piece on him not too long ago, a couple of months ago on Lukeba, and his release clause is about 90 million. and he's 22, I think. So
Yeah, I
we'd
think
have
they're
to
willing to let
pay.
him go for less than that release clause because of how
Yeah,
terrible Leipzig's season has been. So that's if it was that release clause, I'd be like, nah, not a hope, don't touch him. But I think if they're willing to let him
hmm
go for less than that, I think it's an option that we should consider because he is quite a good young centre back.
yeah. The point I was just getting round to was we'd start to pay a lot of money to get him out of there,
Yeah.
and is that fee, in the region of it's somewhere in between 40 to 60 million pounds? Would that not get a Guehi out of Palace? And I think it probably will do with a year left, from what's been reported anyway. But I do see that Luke Haven and Hato are both really similar defenders to almost like Joe Gomez. And I think Marc Guehi's sort of very, very big in a command at him, almost a bit more like to Ibu Kanate. And if we have got that hanging over us, or we could be losing Kanate for free in the summer, it just makes so much sense to get Marc Guehi who can play straight away. And he takes up that homegrown spot. As we know, we need a few more homegrown players. So
Yeah, I agree. The only issue that I have with Marc Guehi is the aerial duels. Now, I haven't looked into it too much of an extensive detail yet, but the win percentage is horrible for a guy that's 6 foot tall. And I don't know if it's the fact that like he engages in as many aerial duels as both Van Dijk and Konate, but wins like 20% less, which is the worrying thing for me. Is that a worry for you, Luke, at all, or do you think that's down to maybe Palace's system and the fact that he's sort of the left-sided centre back in a back three with his wing backs, and he's not really in the box defending those headers? But you'd argue then the volume might speak of some concern. Like it's not as if he's not getting involved in them.
yeah, I understand what you mean. The crosses and stuff probably coming in from different areas. If you're thinking Palace is sort of like absorbing pressure, defending deep, especially against a lot of big sides, and their philosophy has been sort of playing on the break this season, and they've been very good at it because we've got a very quick attack going forwards. The balls into the box coming a lot deeper. They're coming over the top and at the back post. Don't get me wrong, he's not as good as Kanate and Van Dijk in the air, and the stats say that. But I think the stats are exacerbated. And if he was to come here, he's not going to be facing as many deep balls into the box. He's probably going to be defending more on the halfway line, trying to stop attacks that way rather than in his own penalty box trying to get rid of the ball, head it out all the time. Granted, the stats are the stats, and that's sort of how it goes. But a changing system probably will see that sort of trickle out and see his stats come around the other way.
Yeah, I think the change in system where, as you said, Palace like to sit back with their back five, so to speak, compared to how we would. So he'd be defending the box an awful lot with Palace, whereas he'd be defending space an awful lot more with us. And I think he's more than agile enough to be able to do that. My only worry is the set pieces side of things, that we've been so good on them. I think that's the only weakness that it may come in with. But Race, I'll throw the same question over to you with Marc Guehi and the supposed worry about his aerial duels and how good he is in the air. Now, obviously, as Luke mentioned, like the system at Palace would be different to us. He'd be asked to defend more space rather than man to man, like he would at Palace in a lower block, so to speak, which would suit him. But does the lack of height with him only being 6 foot, and we have like Ibu who's 6'4" and Verge who's 6'5", and we had Kwanzaa that's about 6'3", and Joe Gomez is about 6'4" as well. Does the lack of height with him worry you, or do you think this is a completely overblown thing that we'll be fine on set pieces, Race?
Well, I think he's certainly not a perfect player, but you mean what player is out there? But like you just mentioned, we have Konate and Van Dijk and all these other guys that are great in the air. So obviously you want your both center backs to be great in the air, but if one isn't as great, but the other one is excellent, I don't have too much of a concern really. I mean, look, he's the player he is now, because because of he's a great defender, not necessarily because he's great in the air. If you can live with that, I don't think it's anything too concerning. If we're interested and if he's worth that much, and he's been in the Premier League for a bit now, he's obviously with England and stuff. Like he's a professional player. He's I don't have any concerns about him in the air, especially with the players or the players he'll play alongside. And of course we have some height around the team as well. I mean, Virgil and Konate and like defending corners and stuff. We have players that are willing to put their head in, and of course if Ekitike is back in corner stuff, he's a taller player, so he can get ahead in there. It's not really much of a concern for me. I just think he's certainly a stronger player. He's built for the Premier League in terms of just his size and strength. So if he can learn maybe just bully some players off a little more and then get a head up, and I think that'll suit him. And like you said too, the way we play as well, we're gonna have a lot of possession and stuff, and then playing with Crystal Palace and more of a reserve, formation. He's maybe not as great, but yeah, I don't have too much concern for that.
Okay. Yeah, it's a concern for me more so for the set pieces. That's really the height of my concern, because we were one of the elite set piece defending teams last season, one of the least XG conceded, and one of, hilariously, the most XG scored with regards to, we just couldn't really finish them. But I feel that will swing the other way now this season, in that we just start scoring bags of goals from free kicks and set pieces now, because we've guys like Frimpong, Kerkez, Florian Wirtz, and then you have all of three of them alone can whip balls into the box, no problem. And then you also have now big guys with Cody Gakpo, who's 6'4", Hugo Ekitike, who's 6'3", and then you bring in Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate, who are both 6'4" and 6'5" as well. You have a big presence in the box. Casey here asking the question about Nico Schlotterbeck. We've been linked a few times with him over the years and shouldn't be too expensive. I would love him. I would absolutely love him, only for the fact he done his ACL 2 months ago. That's the only problem. Otherwise, I would have been all over him this summer. I think with Dortmund pot nearly missing Champions League. Did they miss Champions League? I think they missed all Europe, to be honest with you. I can't remember exactly. But with them basically nearly missing all of Europe, I think he would have been on the way out. Similarly to the likes of Adeyemi, who plays for them too. I think he plays for them. And then Jamie Bino Gittins as well has left Dortmund too, and he's now gone to Chelsea, which they can field a full 11 of wingers at this rate. But I would have gotten Schlotterbeck for that left centre-back, left-back role if we were getting a Frimpong, just to let him bomb forward and sit in a back three, and it would have been perfect. But then he had to go and do his ACL. That absolutely scuppered any hope of a transfer here.
They did make top four last year, by the way.
Oh, they did? Okay, so they're good. They're good.
Yeah, I think it was the final day, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
At 2 points.
Like, they had a chance to either be 4th or 8th. It was nuts. And I think they did get it on the last day. Okay, before we move on to our next topic, we just want to make sure to get everybody to like and subscribe and leave a like on YouTube, and for lots of regular content. We'll be streaming much more regularly going forward. Hopefully everybody can get involved. We have 4,500 people in here at the moment watching us across YouTube and Twitter. If you're watching on Twitter, we've left a link below where you're watching this stream for you to jump over and subscribe on YouTube. Please feel free to do so. Very much appreciated. If you're currently listening on any of your favorite podcast or streaming platforms, make sure to jump over to Anything Liverpool, both on Twitter, Spotify, and YouTube as well. We'd very much appreciate you joining us, as there's lots more content coming in the next couple of weeks. But we're going to move on to the big news that is our big 6'3" Thierry Henry regen. That is Hugo Ekitike. Luke, if you see the way he runs and he moves, he just reminds me so much of Henry. I'm not saying he will be that player.
I've watched him a fair bit. Yeah. And I understand your comparison. He's really quick and he's good on the ball. Yeah. But I do look at him and just think, you run like you are Mohamedou Sakho. Like, I don't know if anyone else remembers Mohamedou Sakho running around on the ball. And I don't know what it is. I think it's because Ekitike's legs look as skinny as my arms. I tell you, but he does look quick. He is going to be threatening. He's going to be something completely different.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think it's going to be some level of control that we're going to have on the ball between him, Florian Wirtz, and our two midfielders behind them in Ryan Gravenberch, and we also have Alexi McAllister. The level of control we will have through the middle of the pitch, I think, would be unprecedented. But I'll throw it over to yourself, Luke, with regards to your own opinion on it, of the player. I've watched him an awful lot throughout the Bundesliga. I've been on the Hugo Ekitike train for months, ever since just before the January window when Omar Marmoush left to go to Man City. I was like, yeah, that's not the player they should have gotten. They should have gotten the other guy. But how do you feel? His medical is due tomorrow. This signing is basically done, barring we get a whole Fekir thing and Isak comes and we cut it as straight after the medical before anything is signed. Let's hope that doesn't happen, in my own opinion. Obviously, if Isak comes, I'd rather the two of them. But how do you feel about the signing? Do you how much of an improvement is this? And for anybody that doesn't know Hugo Ekitike, describe him as a player.
I I'm not really sure how I would describe him, to be honest. I quite like when he's sort of playing in behind, drifting out wide and coming back in. That's the way I sort of like him. And if I'm totally honest, he's very much a similar player to when we bought Darwin Núñez. And Darwin Núñez was amazing for Benfica. Then he come here and he just couldn't translate that form. I feel like he moves in a very, very similar way. In terms of getting the deal done and over the line tomorrow, I'm sort of made up, but I'm also sort of disappointed because I just think we are paying an absolute bomb load of money for him. 90 million euros, and that's part and parcel because the market is absolutely something's happened with it and nobody knows, and everyone's just paying an absolute shed load for anyone. I think one of the reasons it's so high is because there's actually not that many strikers in Europe where everyone's looking, going, he's the 9 to buy, he's the 9 to buy. The only one everyone's looking at and doing that is Isak, and then everyone's sort of had cold feet a little bit around the likes of Gyökeres and even Ekitike at times with other clubs. So I think that's playing a part in the fee. The only reason I'm slightly disappointed is because when you're paying 90 million and, the rumours were there that we could have got Isak for about 120 to 140. Obviously, that doesn't look the way now, but about a week ago, we had hope of that happening. So you're sort of crossing your fingers where, we were going to get him. Listen, I think he'll be a great addition and he'll add something else to the team. Something that we didn't have last season. We had Luis Diaz playing the false nine quite a lot, didn't we? And Arne Slot, whenever he's gone, he's usually had this sort of big, tall brute of a striker. Jimenez comes to mind. When he was at Feyenoord, he's recently got a move, hasn't he, over to AC Milan. It's not quite worked out for him. But he was that sort of calibre of striker, this big brute who's going to stand in the box and be your typical number 9. That's what we're trying to buy Ekitike for by the looks of it. And whether he can do that job or not, we're going to have to wait and see. I think he's got the facilities and the ceiling to do that job. But I'm just worried about the price tag. And when you pay that much money for a player, there's a certain sort of pressure that you've got to turn up. And it's whether he's going to let that hang over them. That's going to be the telling, isn't it?
Well, to put it to you this way, 3 years ago, off the back of 13 goal contributions, Isak went for 20 million euro less. Now, hindsight being hindsight, obviously that worked out. We signed Ekitike off the back of a 34 goal contribution season for 20 million euro more. Do you think, given context of that and his more overall game, like his playmaking ability, his dribbling ability, his hold-up play, his link-up play, and how good he is technically on the ball, that even if he isn't scoring, he has that to fall back on, which is probably the issue that we had with Darwin, that if he isn't scoring, he doesn't have an awful lot to fall back on, bar his energy, unfortunately. Do you think that will help him translate a little bit easier to the Premier League?
Yeah, I think it will, definitely. And I think that's the reason why we're paying the money for him, isn't it? Because we're looking at we're just trying to find somebody who can do both. And that's probably we had last season. We had Darwin Núñez who weren't scoring, and then he couldn't do the link-up play. Jota, bless him, was injured for a lot of the campaign. Come back, he got that great goal, didn't he, at Forest and stuff. But he had a lot of injuries and we didn't really have him as an option. And then we were just playing Diaz in the 9, and Diaz had a few games where he was really good in the 9 and really good in front of goal, and then he'd sort of go missing for about 8 games on the bounce. And he'd be really good at linking up the play and playing the ball around the park, but in terms of getting in the box and being the man to put the finish away, he was absent. So we are trying to find someone who is going to do both and is going to sort of be the piece in that jigsaw. And it's mad that we're saying that as Premier League champions, that we're just trying to find someone to fill the 9, to be, the best 9 in the league who's going to go on and excel us to that level, and we're already champions. So it's mad, and I think it's a little bit of a credit to Slot as well, that he's still looking at this going, I know we've won the league, but this still isn't perfect. I still need somebody else. I still need a striker. And he's obviously put a bit of pressure on the club to spend a bit of money, hasn't he? So let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, we've gone and won the league, and then we've technically broke our own transfer record twice in the space of 2 months. Like, it's nuts. Like if we hadn't signed Florian Wirtz, Hugo Ekitike would have been the record breaker. And I guess, Race, if as Luke was mentioning, with the pressure that may be on Ekitike to perform, I think having gotten Florian Wirtz, that takes an awful lot of the pressure off. The main sort of issue that an awful lot of people would have had with Ekitike is the expected goals underperformance. Now, does that worry you at all, or is that just a soundbite that a lot of these bigger accounts are using to, clown the player, make fun of the fact that Liverpool have overpaid and got robbed? How do you view it, and how do you view the player? Are you happy, or as Luke mentioned, he's both happy and a little bit disappointed because you heard obviously we could have gotten Isak for an extra couple of quid more, and he seems to be kicking up a bit of a fuss now too. So how do you feel about the whole situation itself, Reyes? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Isak would have been, I don't know, maybe dream is a little extreme, but just what a dream, I guess a dream signing that would be. I mean, a player who's one of the best strikers, if not the best striker, in the Premier League already, and you could just simply bring him into your team. You have the players around him, and he could just keep going. Elevate to another level. The transfer fee is what it is. I mean, the market is so inflated. I mean, players cost. If you want a great player who's on the rise, you're gonna have to spend a lot of money. So I don't have too much issue with the fee. If I don't think there'd be much of a rise if we didn't buy Florian Wirtz, and this, like you said, this was our big signing. I don't think there'd be as much of a rise. It's just because we're all of a sudden we're spending all this loads of money. They're seen as a risk, but in reality, these are moves that we had to make. For Ekitike coming in, we haven't really solved the striker position since Firmino. We've brought in these players that, they're great at certain things. They've had good runs of form, but nothing's really stuck. Jota, he was a great player, off the bench and a great finisher, and on his day, he was a really dangerous player up front. But he had his dry spells, and there were some frustrations. His link-up play wasn't that great. His chance creation wasn't, really there what we wanted it to be, and he had his flaws. Of course, Nunez, finishing was trouble for him, getting runs of form and all that, and obviously he's fallen out of favor. We tried Cody Gakpo when we first bought him, playing him through the middle, but we've kind of we figured out he's best on the left hand side, cutting inside and firing goals in. I'm trying to think of any other strikers we've kind of put in, like last season, Luis Diaz, getting shifts up front, out of, we put him there because no one else could really play the number 9 effectively, and Luis Diaz could at least control the ball and make things happen and could finish, when needed. But we know long term he's not a striker. He's more of a natural left winger. So the hope with Ekitike coming in is just we have more control in that number 9 position. He's not going to be a false 9 like Firmino was, but he's gonna be able to drop deeper, make plays, hold up play, and all that stuff. In watching, I won't say I've watched full Frankfurt games, stuff like that, but watching clips and stuff, he has more control with the ball. I think that Nunez has. Nunez was a little more, getting on the end of long balls, making runs in and making a couple passes here and there, or making a couple moves and then taking a chance. Ekitike seems to have a little bit more of that build-up play, that chance creation, that just, again, that control of the ball, which I think will be so important. That's really what I think what Slot is looking for. He's not looking for someone to, just obviously, be this world-class finisher and just, take one touch and bang. In today's game, you have to be more than just an elite finisher, I think, to be a really effective striker. Like I think back to Haaland. He's a great finisher. He's great at that and is a great player, but he doesn't really show up in big games. He doesn't really create chances. I think his impact for City, I think, is overrated. I think he's a great player for what he does, but I think the books maybe people are starting to realize that he's not really improved Man City. He's just kind of funneled the chances more through him. Not to make this about Man City or Holland here, but Ekitike, I think can do a little more on the ball, and that'll help obviously with his adjustment to the Premier League. Coming in, because it's going to be, I do see with Ekitike, struggling a little bit coming in. I think the physicality would be my main concern with him. I mean, he's a skinny fellow. I mean, he's gonna be going against these thicker center backs here in the league and stuff, and that could be an issue for him. And so that's kind of one concern I would have for him. I still think he'll be a great player for us, again, given our track record of just getting these players to hit. Yes, I know Nunez is probably Nunez is probably the one player in recent memory that's hasn't worked out, quite frankly, for the price we paid for him. Yeah, he had some good runs, good forms, and he's obviously good on his day, but in the end, it's obviously not going to work out, and we're looking to sell him, earlier than anticipated. So, but again, I still have faith in what Slot does and the players we bring in, and then him coming in with Wirtz as well, when we talk about living up to that price tag, I think, well, you have two players that have large price tags. And so, if one does, I think I have faith that one will at least, be incredible this year. And if I had to, pick, I'd certainly choose Florian Wirtz. I think he's more of a quote sure thing than Ekitike, if I can use that term correctly. But I just think that the team that Ekitike is going to be coming into, again, you have Salah, you have Gakpo, you have Wirtz, you have Sobasai, you have McAllister, you have Graham. We have such a great core group already. So for him to come in and struggle, I don't think it's not going to be because of his teammates. It's going to be because of his own doing. But I still think he's a fine player, a great player, and we'll see. Like I said, the price tag is the price tag. You got to spend money to get great players in. I mean, look at all these crazy deals that happen. All these rival clubs that want to just point us out and oh, they're spending all this money on this player, this player. Well, look at your own club and look what you do, right? I mean, Arsenal just bought how much money on Madueke from Chelsea? I mean, they keep buying these Chelsea forwards that don't work out and they're overpriced and they're still looking for a striker. I don't want to hear any of it. Chelsea spend, $1 billion on 20 different wingers. United, obviously they're 16th in the table last year. That is what it is. There's just like, I don't want to hear from all these clubs, we're finally spending the money and all of a sudden these people want to say, oh, are you spending all this money? What's going on? Well, I think we just now passed Man City spending from the January window. And if you want to look at net spend, if we sell Diaz, we're going to go below that maybe. Oh, we still haven't? Okay.
Well, no. I mean, Man City has spent £305 million since the January window. Liverpool has spent £295 million. And we broke our own record twice. And one of those records was the British transfer fee record.
Yeah. So it's just a long form tangent here. Like, I don't really care about the transfer fee. It's going to be a lot. We have, if you want to buy, especially a striker, a number 9, that you're going to have to spend a penny, to bring in a good player. So we're not going to go cheap and go shopping in the bargain bin for a striker. So, I mean, I'm obviously excited for Ekitike. I'm excited to see him. Hopefully, sounds like this is happening fast. He'll get the medical done here tomorrow and join up with the squad already in out there in Asia. So, I mean, it's going to be exciting to see him, and we're getting this done in time too. So hopefully I have a little bit of time to adjust and we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it. Very, very excited for it. The issue that I think is funny is people, and now obviously maybe like Race, as you said, maybe the strength of a centre back that he might have to face. He's bigger than Isak. Would you believe?
Yeah.
He's listed at 6'3.5" and 76 kg. Isak is about 7 or 8 kg lighter than him and the same height. Mm-hmm. So for me, I don't think there's much of an issue regarding the strength side of things. I think he's going to be big enough to be able to wriggle around players. And he seems to be, if anybody watches the NBA, he reminds me an awful lot of
Wembanyama. Yeah.
Yeah, that's who he reminds me of. Or KD. Like, they're not the biggest of guys, but they're deceptively strong and they use their body in a way that they can get around guys. Like, I think what Ekitike's biggest strength that I've seen is he can pin a defender behind him and then use his body in a swim move to get around him. And I think that's what will help him massively.
Another thing too, just to touch on, like, he has, his longer legs too, like, he's able to get his foot in there. And I mean, it's like I think the Wemby conversation is or comparison, if you will, I think is funny. Yeah. I think there's a clip of Wembanyama hitting a free kick and people think it's Ekitike, and it's like, no, it's Wembanyama, but you're right. It's kind of a similar comparison there.
Yeah, that's how I see it. And as I said, they're size-wise, they're the same. And where I think Ekitike will thrive is what Slot was asking his striker to do last season. It was not just sit in the box and get on the end of crosses, although that was a part of it. He was asking them to drop to sort of the halfway line, be able to pick up the ball there, turn and go. Florian Wirtz can do that in bunches. And now we have another striker that can do that as well in Ekitike, meaning that Florian, and if I don't know if anybody noticed it, but in the game against Stoke, if you watch where the Rio goal came from, it's from the ball, Florian Wirtz getting the ball essentially where the centre back is, playing it to Mo Salah, who fires it into the middle to Darwin Núñez, who's on the halfway line, turns and dribbles, and then you see Florian Wirtz sprinting past him. Now imagine that as Ekitike and Florian Wirtz, and interchange it as in it's Florian Wirtz and Ekitike is making the run, because Ekitike is rapid as well. I think he was clocked in the Europa League last season at 35 kilometers an hour, 35 and a half. Salah was 36 and a half. So just to give you an idea of pace. Jeremy Frimpong was clocked at about 36, 37. So just to give you the level of pace that's there now. Frimpong has better acceleration, but top end speed, he's like a gazelle the way he gallops. It's going to be fantastic to watch going forward. But we're going to move on now. Speaking of wingers and forwards, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure to jump over to our YouTube channel, leave a like, follow, put your notifications on, make sure that they're there for all future streams and videos. Also, there's a link below if you're watching this on Twitter at the moment or X at the moment that will bring you straight to our YouTube page. So make sure you jump over there. We'd very much appreciate any support that we can get. We're trying to grow the channel as it is. We've doubled our following in the last week, and that is absolutely massive. So thank you so much for all of that. And we've been getting monstrous views. We have nearly over 6,000 people currently at the minute watching us across Twitter and YouTube. Monumental. We cannot thank you guys enough for all of that. It's very much appreciated. If you're currently listening on the likes of Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, as we'll be posting podcasts of these streams on those channels as well, make sure to follow Anything Liverpool and make sure to jump over to our YouTube page as well, where you get a lot more content and sort of snippets of these streams as well and some short form stuff. But we're going to move on now to Luis Diaz and his, to be honest, I think he's gone, but his supposed deal to Bayern Munich. They're looking to submit their second bid soon, whether or not it meets Liverpool's valuation, which is about 70 to 80 million pounds. They're thereabouts. I think if we get 70 million pounds, we'll sell him. But it's going to be interesting to see, because the two guys that we have as replacement targets, I absolutely adore. One is Rodrigo, who's currently playing out of position with Real Madrid at the moment. And over the course of his entire Madrid career, while playing his preferred position of left wing, I think 22 out of 160 games, he averages a goal or an assist every second game while out of position in a completely unbalanced front three for Madrid, and does all of their defensive work as well, especially this season. And then the other option then is Malik Fofana, a left-footed guy who plays on the left wing, but also has the ability to play on the right wing, and is just a ball-carrying monster. Brilliantly creative, loves to create off the dribble, is able to get into the box and penetrate the box and then perform cutbacks to give it to the striker. That's why Leon Striker had a silly amount of goals. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name because I'm going to butcher it, or else my furniture in the sitting room is going to start floating if I try and pronounce it. But Luke, I'll throw it over to you first. The Luis Diaz departure, do you see it as something that will happen to Bayern Munich, or maybe he'll go to Saudi Arabia? And also then sort of follow up on that, of the two options that are linked both very heavily between Malik Fofana and Rodrigo, have you a preference, or do you think one of them maybe stunts Rio Ngamoa, possibly Malik Fofana being 20 years old, that he would stunt him? I don't think he will, but I'd love to know your thoughts on the outgoing and the incoming, I suppose.
Yeah, the outgoing in Luis Diaz is a really difficult one, isn't it? He needs to go. And I think he would like to go, as whispers have sort of made clear. I think his contract situation, his agent hasn't done a very good job of setting him up as he. I think we need to remember sometimes football is a job for these people. It's a very short career and they do make enormous amounts of money. But when Luis Diaz retires at 35, he's never going to work a day in his life ever again. So I think we've got to look at that side of it. Reportedly, his contract at Liverpool is not lucrative at all. We're pretty much ripping him off. And it doesn't expire this summer, it expires next summer, doesn't it? So there'll be 2 more years of that, and then Luis Diaz would then be 30, and we'd be having to renew his deal, and he's going to want big money, because he's never been on big money before. So he needs to get out, really, to set himself up for the rest of his life and set his family up, and that sort of thing, where Saudi would be extremely lucrative. They'd offer him a lot of money to go there. However, I do think he's got more ambition than that. I think he would prefer to go to Bayern Munich, because they're, there's not the guarantee of the Bundesliga, but it's pretty close. They're probably going to win that, and then they can probably go quite deep in Europe. I was surprised they didn't go deeper this season. I know Inter Milan sort of got one over on them. So I think there's still a lot of possibilities there. If he goes to Bayern Munich, he could still play until he's 32, then go to Saudi Arabia. But the driving factor, the motivation, I would say, is the contract. Liverpool aren't going to renew him and give him a really lucrative deal at 30. I can't see it happening. In regards to the other options, I don't know a whole lot about Fofana, so I can't really talk about him. Rodrigo, to me, also seems like pie in the sky, and I think that's just because he's at Real Madrid. I think that's the only reason. It's not often Liverpool sign a player from Real Madrid. Does anyone know the last player we signed from Real Madrid, by any chance?
Oh God,
I've got a sneaky feeling that oh no, it's not. It's not Alvaro Arbeloa, because we bought him from Espanyol, didn't we? And sold him to Real Madrid. So I wouldn't.
I was going to say
Yeah,
Arbeloa, yeah, but
it's not. No. So I wouldn't even know who it is. Who the last players we bought from Real Madrid? Someone surely watching to be able to tell us. But it just seems
Yeah,
like,
answers on a postcard. Anybody that's watching.
it just doesn't seem like a very Liverpool move to go out and buy someone who's already established and absolutely amazing. Hence what we haven't gone and bought Isak. If we do go and do it, though, I'll be made up. And I think there is a moving factor here in that the money we get for Luis Diaz, we might be able to get Rodrigo for considerably less. So say we sell Luis Diaz for 70 million, we could maybe bring Rodrigo in for a little bit less than that. Not significantly, not, nowhere under 50, but in that sort of region. I think we could get him out of there. And I think he wants to be the main man somewhere. Rodrigo, I think we can bring him here and promise him that in a couple of seasons, you are going to be the main man here, which isn't going to be the case at Real Madrid, is it? Surrounded by the likes of Mbappe, Bellingham, the one who we're not going to talk about, all the rest of them. So, yeah, I would love to see it happen. I do think it's pie in the sky stuff. I don't think it is going to happen, but I would love Liverpool to prove me wrong and bring Rodrigo in. But I'll have to let you talk about Fofana, because I'm not really too aware. I'm aware about Lyon's relegation situation and that they have appealed it, but is there an outcome yet? Are they still relegated at the moment? What's going on there?
I think weren't they reinstated?
They've appealed it and they're not. Yeah, they're not relegated.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be relegated. Which I think that's absolutely shocking, purely because poor Palace now have to suffer from that, even though they've done nothing wrong. And the whole UEFA rule around it is the funniest thing in the world. They have to submit the documents for two teams playing in Europe in March. They didn't even fucking know they were going to be in Europe until they won the FA Cup. Like, so what were they supposed to expect?
Either, going up against City.
Yeah,
you can't blame them.
Oh, it's absolutely nuts. The thing with Rodrigo, I feel, is that I think he's seen the toxicity that is within that Real Madrid camp, and then he's looked over the fence and seen us. And I hope this isn't too morbid that I say it, but seeing how much we came together over the tragic passing of Diogo Jota, and was like, holy shit, that's like a real family over there compared to what it is here. Like, they seem to be able to pick everybody up no matter how far they fall. Look at Darwin. And then he looks at his own pigsty over there, I suppose, in Madrid, if you want to call it that. And he's like, if I fall by the wayside here, there's no support system here to be able to help me. Whereas if I go there, it's like I'm walking into a family and it's a big warm hug, I suppose. And while a lot of people might scoff at that, a player who runs on confidence, especially a forward, would look at that and be like, this is exactly where I want to be. I want to be able to have this support system around me because it makes me better. And I think it helps as well that we've basically been watching him since he was 13, around that age. And we were about 5 minutes from getting a deal done when he was on his way over from Brazil. But then they pulled the plug. We were only going to get him for like €3 million at the time, mind you, which is mental to think about. But Race, how do you feel about the options themselves? And we'll touch on Malik Fofana a little bit before we finish the stream, because I've watched him extensively. He's very good. How do you feel about Diaz leaving? Or do you think it's time to cash in, like sell high kind of a thing, similar to what Brentford and Wolves have done with Cunha and Mbeumo, both scamming United out of about 140 million quid? How do you feel about Diaz going, and what do you think about the two options that we currently have that are our favourites, with Rodrigo being the top option and Malik Fofana being the second?
Well, I think all the reasons laid out there earlier was that, the contract situation for Diaz, I think the writing's on the wall. I mean, there's just been so much buzz around, his exit, whether it was the Barcelona rumors, from last season, and of course Saudi and Bayern now. And, it comes to a point where either a player of his age and caliber, you either extend him or you sell him. Like, there's no in between. You have to make a decision. You can't just let him you're not gonna let him leave for free. I mean, that's just not good business, for a club. So I think the writing's on the wall for him. I do think an agreement with Bayern will be agreed upon. I think if the Barca stuff I think is fizzled out. The Saudi stuff. I mean, that's given that we're in negotiation with Bayern right now, I think it's pretty clear indication that he'll be headed that way. Of course, we have the previous communication with them already. With the Gravenberg transfer and Mane and Thiago. Like there's communication we have between them with them. So I think there's I think that move is, in my expert opinion, I think it's imminent. But with Rodrigo, he's one of those players. It's sort of a disgruntled asset from a big club. And I view this a little bit towards Gravenberch. He went to Bayern. That was his big move. From where he was in the Dutch league. He's probably really excited to go there. And then after a season, it's like, well, man, this kind of reeks a little bit. There's a lot of players, a lot of pressure. And then obviously we got him, on a discount really, and look what he's turned out to. With Rodrigo, it's obviously different, given he's been there longer. Had a lot of success with them, of course. Won, all the titles in the world with Madrid. And now it seems to come to a point where it's like Madrid are a club, that if they don't feel like you're, if they're not completely happy with you, they have the money to just go spend it and buy your replacement and just kind of shove you out the door. And for all the reasons you mentioned, as a player, you want to feel wanted by your club. You don't want to feel discouraged. And, again, this is a player too. He came, to Real Madrid at a young age and, growing up, not just as a player, but as a person, maturing, you just come to light like, man, what's, what am I really doing here? As a professional, what's the right step for me? And so I think if Liverpool can, pull this off and get him for a relative, cheaper than market value, for whatever he's worth, I think it would be, a really incredible piece of business. I think he's a proven player. I think again, in his situation, you bring him in and all of a sudden he's feeling better about himself. He's feeling wanted by the club. His performance is probably gonna, go up and improve. So I don't think there'd be any doubts on the player coming in. Of course he'd be on that. You think he'd be on that left-hand side, with Gakpo, compete with Gakpo there, and just forming a nice little combination there. Of course, if Saul on the right-hand side, if you want to put Rodrigo out there, whatever, seems like he's versatile enough to do that. But I think going after Rodrigo, you're testing the waters there. Of course, we have the recent communication with Real Madrid, so I mean, you just hit redial and call him back up again, say, hey, what's up? But I think Rodrigo would be a really intriguing asset to bring in because again, it's a player from a big club where it seems like the relationship is kind of at a standstill. And if you can capitalize on that, you can take that disgruntled asset, bring it into your team, and let him flourish. I think that's it's a no-brainer, to be honest. I think again, with our setup, with our club, how strong we are, how much of a unit we are. I mean, like I said, our transfer record as of recently is just incredible. So you bring in a player like that, I think it'd just be, if we could, bring him in, as a replacement for Diaz, assuming Diaz goes out the door, I think that'd be a great swap to make.
Yeah, Rodrigo for me is Luis Diaz on steroids. He just, the only thing that I would not even worry about, because to be honest with you, I think probably Rodrigo is one of the best signings we could make this summer. Better than Wirtz, better than Ekitike. I think putting him in on that left wing completely revolutionizes that front line, and I'd be very interested to see how that develops. Malik Fofana, I would see as more of a project to sort of sit behind Gakpo and learn, but he's also left-footed, so I think he could move over to the right wing and then deputize behind Salah, along with Jeremy Frimpong as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it and what they view, because if you can get Rodrigo for 65 million, but Lyon are asking you for 50 million for Malik Fofana, just go get Rodrigo. That's not even a question that should be asked. But some news that is just broke as well that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Dave O'Cop had mentioned earlier that Rangers were looking to sign Liverpool left back Owen Beck on a permanent deal, which does not seem to be true whatsoever, as we have here that Derby County are closing in on Liverpool left-back Owen Beck on a loan for the season. A deal agreed with the Wales under-21 international, who is expected to undergo a medical later this week. Beck was signed by John Eustace at Blackburn last year and is very keen for play under him again. John Eustace is now the manager at Derby County. I can see that being a very good move, and that's from John Percy with the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph as well. So very reliable source on that. Luke, basically the last topic of the day. Owen Beck really hasn't had much of a look in. I can see possibly him deputizing behind Milos Kerkez when we eventually move on from Andy Robertson and Kostas Tsimikas, which may be in the next 12 months, thereabouts.
Yeah, so it's a good loan for him, really, isn't it, to get him going again? We did the way these sort of loans look similar to is when Harvey Elliott played half a season at Blackburn, and he was like really good, and then he come back, and we were like, yeah, we'll start to gradually put him into the team. This is probably what Liverpool are looking at. They're trying to put that pathway in place for the player. Say, yeah, go away, you know, we'll keep an eye on you. If you're doing a good job, you can come back. You might be able to get into this side. That's probably the way they're looking at it and sort of seeing, is this going to be Robertson's final year? By the looks of it, will be. I've had some interesting talk about possibly Robertson being redeployed at centre-back, which could be good, could be interesting, you know. I'm not sure about that's going to go down on Steve's set piece one. So worried about the set piece of Robertson 5'9" at centre back like PSV away. It's all happening again. Yeah, it's okay. We can get Ekitike to defend the corners, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that comes through really, because then there might be a way where we keep Kostas Tsimikas as well. If we're going to move Kostas Tsimikas on, which in 6 weeks' time he could be living somewhere else, which must be horrible thoughts for him and feelings. Owen Beck looks like he'll have that pathway into the side. So if he goes out, really smashes it on loan, he can come back and be the deputy, which would be boss for him, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's all sorts of moving parts, sliding doors. That's how these loans work, and these scenarios tend to evolve. But yeah, let's keep an eye on him, see how he does.
Yeah, I'd be very excited to see him, because I know when he was with Dundee race, and we brought him back before sending him back out to Dundee again for the remainder of the season. Their fans were pissed that we took him back because he was one of their best players up at Dundee. So do you think that he can come in and deputise behind Milos Kerkez, who in his own right is fairly young as well, and sort of let the two young guys battle it out for who's going to be the starting left back? Although I think it'll be a bit of a one-sided battle currently at the moment without a big jump from Owen Beck. But having a homegrown, he wouldn't be homegrown, would he? No, he wouldn't be.
I think he would. I think if you've made so many appearances between, let me just check the rule now, but it's not so many appearances before 21, so he'd be all right.
He needs to be in an FA affiliated team, and Scotland doesn't count. That's why Robbo isn't homegrown. So that's why he was with Aberdeen up until he was like 18 or something like that. And then he needed to be with, or 18 or 19 or something like that. And then we took him and kept him with the under 18s or something. I'm nearly sure he doesn't get it by the skin of his teeth. I'm not 100% certain about it. But anyway, Luke is...
Look, I'm trying to scan now.
Yeah, Luke is having a run of that in the background, our resident data analyst. Race, can you give me your thoughts on Owen Beck? And is this the correct move? Should we be focusing on getting rid of the two left backs that we have currently at the moment? Or do you think that's maybe too much change in the one window, considering bringing in 5 players as it is already, and we could be on for 2 more?
I think it's a little too much. I think Robertson, you keep him around, you still keep him in the squad. He's certainly a valuable player in terms of his leadership and experience. And, I think it'd be naive to think that Kerkez is going to come in year one and start every single game and just, even though he's a fantastic player coming in, I don't think you want to put that type of pressure and put that on a player. I mean, Kerkez is still a young guy. He's only 21 years old, and Owen Beck, he's older than him. So, I mean, you talk about a player that, in terms of being a professional is right there with him. And so I think, long term, you maybe hope that there's a bit of a Kerkez and Beck sort of, dynamic going on, similar to the right-hand side with Frimpong now and Connor Bradley. It's always good to have depth around the team. Tsimikas here is sort of the odd man out because he's not like the experienced type player that Robertson, or is kind of granted, Tsimikas has been a tremendous, player for us and, by all means our Greek scouser and all that. So he's a fan favorite. But in terms of on the field, I think you'd probably side with Robertson more than Simcast if you had to pick which one to keep and sell. I don't know if that's how it's going to work out. There's been no buzz whatsoever about Simicast, leaving. From what I understand, it's just kind of speculation on our end because, of course, you bring in Kirkez, who's the money we've spent for him, we're gonna play him a lot, and then you have Robertson, and then you have Simicast, who's sort of third choice. Although last season there really was a rotation between Robertson and Simicast, so it's all down to what Slot thinks, and I have zero interest in sliding Robertson over to center back to get him more minutes. I don't think you don't want that at all. As he gets older and he's not he's not like a physically imposing guy. He's kind of he has a great left foot, but you don't really want him tracking back at a center back role. I don't think that's a good idea. But back going out on loan here, hopefully in the same mold as Harvey Elliott, gets that, really shines with the championship, and then looking for the next season to as we kind of sort our own business at left back, this year, hopefully become more clear. Maybe it'll just then be, just Kirkez, next summer, and then Robertson and, Simicast, who knows what their futures hold. But this is just another case of hopefully a youngster going out on loan and getting some experience and hopefully having a future with us.
I have had a quick look, and Owen Beck is eligible as a homegrown player. And the sources.
Oh, thank God.
Jack Lusby from 442, and this is Anfield. So if it's wrong, it's his fault, not mine. So.
Yeah. But that's why I was looking, because when I looked it up, it was like only the English FA and the Welsh FA are included in what you would consider homegrown. So I guess his years coming up through maybe the Welsh academies and then going up to Aberdeen. I'm nearly sure I'm thinking of Owen Beck as that, because he went up to Aberdeen and then we got him from Scotland. Or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. I could be completely wrong.
He played a lot of Bolton to sort of get his appearances to be homegrown.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably the best way to look at it.
He played so much at Bolton. And I think that would in the Championship or League One. That's where it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, if he's homegrown, that's brilliant. Happy. But, guys, we are going to finish it up there. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We've over 8,000 people currently watching at the moment. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're currently watching us on YouTube. If you're watching us on X, please do jump down into the comments below and you will be able to see the link straight away. It's the first post after the video has gone live. Make sure to jump over to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Leave us a like, turn on your notifications. Lots of content coming your way over the next while. We'll be live again, another live stream on Wednesday. Charlie will be hosting that live stream, so make sure to stick around for that. It'll be at 6:30 on Wednesday evening, so make sure you're around for that. If you're currently listening on the likes of Spotify, Apple Music, or your favorite streaming platform, make sure to follow Anything Liverpool. Make sure to jump over to our YouTube channel as well and subscribe for all sorts of juicy content. But from myself, from Luke, from our resident Ted Lasso lookalike race, thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Monday evening stream where Hugo Ekitike will be performing his medical tomorrow and will be a Liverpool player before flying out to visit the squad on their Asia tour. Currently going to play in Hong Kong first before flying over then to Japan to play Yokohama in Japan then. And I'm sure Wataru Endo is going to get a massive reception there. But thank you so much for joining us. We hope everybody's a wonderful evening, and